Minutes in practice. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Serious Play. Today we're joined by a lot of us, you know. If this room goes up in flames, so does Serious Play. That's true.
Yeah.
Today we're really honored to stream with Raina, Koskimaa. And so we're going to be playing some Rocket League, but we got a lot of names to get through. I'll just start. I'm Eric Kirsting, PhD student here at UW-Milwaukee.
I'm Kelly Breivik, PhD student at UW-Milwaukee.
Ryan Else, PhD student at the same place.
Janelle Malagon, you can guess. PhD student here.
Stuart Moulthrop, lifelong learner.
Layla Ziller, PhD candidate with anthropology.
All right.
Layla, you're so cool.
And
Raina Koskimaa, professor of contemporary culture studies from the University of Jyväskylä, Finland.
all right. And today we're going to be playing some Rocket League. It was originally a game called like Soccer, like Rocket League or Rocket Powered Cars. And to start, why don't we just play a local game against the computer? Well, you and I can even be on the same team. How does that sound? Do you want to play against the hardest level of the bots?
No. The easiest level.
The easiest. We'll do the pro level. Not all right. We'll cut the difference. All right, and we'll play. Do you have a favorite map?
Not really.
All right, we'll play on this beach volleyball map. This seems kind of neat.
Nice. Yeah.
All right, and so, could we get a little bit of volume? Not too much, but. Or maybe there's just, is there no volume?
The TV is low, but the, what's it called?
Press, I think, start on yours. Or A. Let me see. There we go. All right, so you're on the right. Let's both be Team Blue. All right, I've joined Team Blue. I think you want to go up. If you click Auto, it'll probably put you on Team Orange to make us adversaries. All right. Here we go. Do you know the controls in Control? Like this will be like up. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, geez.
So what is this game for people who have never heard of it before?
Janelle knows a lot about it, and I trust her.
Okay, hello. So Rocket League is a mishmash game that kind of emulates some sporting mechanics. We've talked about this on the arena before, but it really is exactly what it looks like. It is
I missed it.
playing soccer.
You set me up well.
And it's just as cars playing soccer, and they fly around, they flip like Eric just did. The game itself and the way that it's played changed a bit since it first came out. Over time, different players figured out how to fly, and that became integral to the game. Not everyone is that good, and I'm one of those people that is not that good. But that's effectively what this game is, and it has a pretty substantial esports following. Okay, cool.
I just love the aspect of kind of like cycling, like offense to defense, very much like you would.
Like in a traditional sports game.
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted watching. So.
That is
the
that is the truth about playing this game. We were playing this game last time on the arena, which for those of you watching that might not know, that's our esports show. And when we were playing on the arena, we did talk a bit about cycling and kind of like the natural progression of moving in and out of a defensive or offensive position.
Mm-hmm.
Can we move to a keyboard? Unrealistic to say that you can keep one
That's
place.
A good question. I think we might have to reset the map. But go ahead and keep talking, Janelle.
Yeah. Just that it's a bit unrealistic to say I'm going to be on defense forever, so I'm going to be the
Oh
goalie.
boy, this will be fun.
There aren't traditional roles in that way.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. We'll try to do the same thing. And then you can be on the left here. And now you should be, let me see, you should be the left one. Let me look. Yeah, and so try to just maneuver the mouse over to click. Yeah, oh, there we go. And I'll get this over there. There we go. All right. You want to be blue or are you like orange now?
Well, we can continue with the blue one. Yeah.
All right.
Oh my god, Ryan, just for you.
Ryan Cam, 2020.
Yeah, that's what we have
Um,
in the back row.
Yeah.
All
Do
right.
you wish it was just your reaction though? Like just close up.
So yesterday in the seminar we were talking about what sort of
Oh.
distinguishes esports from other competitive games.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious if you would consider, I mean, clearly, Rocket League is an esport. It can be. But, you know, would you consider people at home playing competitive mode of Rocket League to be participating in the esport? Or does it have to be sort of an officially sanctioned, highly sort of organized...
Yeah, that went pretty well.
Oh, yeah, that's a good shot.
I mean, it's the difference between like bowling in a bowling league and just bowling, right? Like
Right.
either way, you're
Yeah.
bowling.
Well, yes and no, right? If you're playing the ranked matches, then you are competing at a level where, you know, you're trying to be as competitive as possible.
Yeah.
It's not just playing for fun.
I wonder
I'm thinking in particularly maybe of Overwatch, where
right,
you know,
where the competitive scene, even without it being within the esports
Right.
infrastructure, is still very competitive.
and it can be individuals sort of, you know, deciding that they want to play in a competitive mode, and then being pitted with other individuals or other teams. So yeah.
I wonder if it's kind of like a local basketball league in your neighborhood. Like you set up a series or like maybe a small local tournament. That's kind of, we were talking a little bit about matchmaking on the arena last time, and it's just like thinking of the way that matchmaking works. If you're sorted by maybe region or by skill, if there's some kind of like skill progression, that might be maybe another way to think about it.
All you.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the
Oh,
sport...
that's moving a lot slower than I
the
anticipated.
sport...
Just so you know, Janelle, you'll have to speak up a little bit.
Thank you, chat, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I think the sport in esport could get as leaky as game, you know?
Yeah.
So, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, I like what what Raina was talking about yesterday in terms of like a game becomes a sport when an institution is kind of created around it. And I think that that's a really interesting and valuable way of kind of considering it. Like, and then it kind of, because of like, you know, the malleability of the term institution, like it allows like for, you know, at once high school players playing, you know, and their, you know, high school football at D1 is clearly a sport because there's an institution around it, but so is like the NFL, right? It doesn't have to be played necessarily for money.
That's a good point.
And then, I mean, like we were also talking about in esports,
Oh no.
specifically the institution is also the creator of the game, the owner of the servers.
That's not always true though.
Yeah?
Right? Because there are a lot of esports leagues that are run independently of the actual developers.
Yeah,
Overwatch is
it's
actually one of the rare examples where that's true.
I guess I should say that, I mean, yeah, it doesn't have to be the case, but in these cases, someone just playing at home is still involved in that institutional version of the sport because they are playing through Blizzard servers and on their client and all that good stuff.
Well, then
What I'm trying to say is I'm an e-athlete.
That's what we're getting at here.
Yeah, that's the moral.
I mean, I'm also just curious to talk about also like the local tournaments. You know, the ones that happen off servers and just kind of how esports.
Oh my goodness.
You know, not so much has changed, but you know, just different evolutions and different ways of considering esports as it's grown from a very grassroots sort of small tournament base to a larger, more corporate base.
Yeah.
Admiral Stanley asks, is there a conflict when the owner of the service is also the operated and sole owner of the game, like Blizzard and Overwatch versus the NFL, who don't technically own football?
Goodness. No!
Yeah,
blame me. I was on defense. I told you to take
I
it,
mean, yeah.
and I
TL
missed this
talked
ball.
about that when she was here.
yeah. I don't know if you could hear, but
it
Janelle
doesn't go
mentioned
well.
that TL Taylor does a lot of work on that, in that idea, that question. I mean, is there conflict? I know. I think Overwatch in particular. Eric, you were just talking a couple of days ago about this pretty controversial direction that they're taking competitive play in with the hero pool.
Yeah, the hero
You know, and it's kind of like, you know, it's like if the NFL owned football, like the actual piece of equipment that is footballs. They could just say, you know, if you don't like it, we'll take our balls and go home.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm always, from a philosophical standpoint, always going to err more on the side of like wanting there to be more decentralized power, you know, and like especially in this kind of case, and it can become tricky. And then one of our colleagues, Nathan, he really worries about this kind of thing as well, right? It's like, how do you archive? Like now that Overwatch is changing, you can't go back and play Overwatch in like a different way, and that seems interesting or scary.
And not just that too, because like one of my main interests in esports is like in the kind of broadcasting and then archival segment of it. And so thinking of this switch from Twitch to YouTube in terms of broadcasting,
That was a bad.
it begs the question of, one, is Amazon, who owns Twitch, concerned at losing all these viewers, all these concurrent, consistent viewers,
You got it.
in such a way that would encourage them to say, remove the Overwatch League channel and its archive of videos, at which point we lose a serious touch point of where we can still access these events and the recordings of them and the actual audience engagement, like in chat and stuff.
We got one. Continue.
And so going forward, that's one of my primary concerns when it comes to esports and the kind of like nebulous state that we're in with so many different broadcasting platforms, but the same concern that you just raised, Ryan, about developer ownership over these leagues, when what they're responsible for is creating the game.
Ooh, that was almost a goal.
As opposed to like creating the league itself. I don't know, it gets messy.
Oh, darn.
That was super close.
Good game. This is what you do in esports, right? You don't shake hands, you just fist bump. Ryan, you want to take over controller?
Oh yeah, I can. I'm not nearly as good as all that, but
We lost 4-2. I don't think.
I put the bar very low, very low.
Yeah.
So I
Oh, who's gonna play with me?
can't
Wants to
talk
hop
and
in.
play at the
It's
same
not
time,
hot.
so maybe.
you're in.
Let's do it.
All
Ryan,
right.
do you prefer
Do you,
controller
yeah, which
or
one do you
keyboard?
prefer?
Oh,
Second.
I'll do the keyboard.
Cool. Either way is fine.
I'm gonna do terribly anyway, so nothing matters.
At least we're on the
But
same
yeah,
team.
so I'm interested, Raina. Your talk today is an introduction to esports, but in some ways, esports have had a life for a long time. But from an academic perspective, it's almost more like an introduction.
Alright.
And I'm
Blue or
curious of
orange?
how you kind of perceive this development of like if you're looking at most electronic sporting events in like the mid 2000s, early 2010s, they were typically run by organizations unaffiliated with the game creators. Whereas now we're seeing much more of the development of like kinds of leagues or
I'm a hustler. I'm a
or
Rocket League
based
hustler.
around play, rather from the developers like Blizzard and Overwatch League is the prime
Minnie,
example.
what are you
But even
doing?
Counter-Strike, Valve is taking
All different.
a more hands-on approach to the way that competition is organized, as well as last other one is I guess Valve again with Dota 2, with the international being like the big tournament. That's like for them, it's like an advertising opportunity almost for the game. So how do you see this kind of changing the way that we study these games?
Well, it's a very that's a rich scene in many ways. So people
what is
usually
my buttons
just
here?
see these kind of big
Let's
tournaments,
right-click, dude.
but it's not the whole story. So there is still kind of lots of this more grassroots activity taking place. All sort of ladders and kind of local leagues and that sort of stuff. So kind of it's easy to see only that sort of the big tournaments. Of course, that's important. That's which kind of keeps it all going at the moment. But yeah, it's.
Thank you, Mehdi. Thank you so much.
But
MVP.
it depends kind of what you want to emphasize. In so many ways you can approach the whole phenomenon.
Did he drive under me when I jumped?
In
That was
chat,
awesome.
going back to copyright, he's saying when ownership moves to public domain, how are we going to talk about these issues? I'm not sure if it will move to public domain.
At least not in the United States.
Yeah.
Actually, it'll be really complicated if it's public domain like in Finland and not in the United States.
Yes.
Yeah, of course that would be ideal case, so that it would be not just kind of controlled by some company, but hard to see how that would happen. Of course, we could have some games which are kind of from the beginning in the open domain.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of any examples of games like that? Besides outside of the actual sports, right? Like, and this is one area where the comparing traditional sports to esports breaks down is the ownership of the game, right? Soccer is like I've heard it described. You can play soccer, with a ball and a pair of shoes, as long as you have that. And so, what other breakdowns do you see between traditional sports and esports that make esports maybe what we call novel or unique?
Yeah. Well, of course, the game itself, it's so much more that's so flexible, more multi-dimensional in that just that there's no really limits to what you can do in a video game. In traditional sports, there's always the limitations of the human kind of physique, which make it so much more kind of interesting to me, at least that you can have so kind of engaging games. In video games, that's certainly one of the aspects. But then now really that question that there is a company owning the game, and also they are using their power to change the meta game all the time to keep kind of the field level. There are various reasons why they're doing that, but it's also putting quite a lot of pressure on the players in that they have to learn new strategies all the time. That's it's hard to see in any traditional sports where the kind of the rules of the games would be changing so
frequently.
Fast. Yeah. But really, the kind of Rocket League is to me it's the ideal esports in many ways. It's a perfect balance of something that you can recognize immediately as a video game. The visual appearance is kind of close to the long tradition of video games, and at the same time it's recognizable. You can see also the traditional football element in there, and also kind of dirt rally type of racing element. So it's combining both the kind of aspects of video gaming and the traditional sports. It's very spectator friendly in that you can see kind of all the important things at a glance, which is not always the case. Many of the esports games are such that there are lots of things happening all around the map, and you are just seeing some part of it.
Why do you think games like Madden and NBA Live don't have as much of an esports scene? It seems like it would be, sort of like very sort of realistic simulation-based sports games would seem to lend themselves well to esports.
Yeah,
I think I want to push back just a wee bit, and those games do have esports scenes.
Okay.
And sometimes very robust.
Okay.
Madden has a very strong esports scene with thousands of dollars on it.
Yes, but the point is that this is a diverse field, and they are totally different worlds, and they're not really. There's not much contact between them. So you have this Rocket League, you have Counter-Strike, Overwatch type of esports. Then you have the kind of traditional sports related NHL and FIFA, or whatever. But they're totally different. Also, the audience is different. They have quite a sort of rich scene of their own. But if you are concentrating on this more kind of video game type of esports, then you are not necessarily aware at all what's happening there.
Yeah, it seems, at least in sort of in my layman understanding and the conversations that I would be a part of, they maybe aren't considered esports in the same way that this is or Overwatch is.
Yeah, but of course there is the point that they are closer to the traditional sports, and they also used. And I would say that the Formula One racing is maybe a case in point in that it's so close to the kind of the real thing that the drivers are using the
I
game.
was close.
To train.
Great. Yeah, to train. And there was just recently last year a case where one of the kind of virtual racing champion got a chance to test drive kind of real Formula One car. And in the first ever kind of test drive, he already beat some of the that sort of
Really?
professional Formula One
That's
drivers
surprising because
just playing the game.
That's crazy. Yeah, I
Nice.
think to kind of we brought this up when we played Rocket League in response to, I'm sure you're aware, in the pre-Olympics show for Intel is sponsoring a Rocket League and Street Fighter tournament, and so we played Rocket League and Street Fighter when that announcement came out, and one of the things that we noted, or I think it might have been Dave who noted, I don't remember who.
Who's next?
Who's
Who made the point, but to some degree, a game like Madden or a game like
Winners stay?
FIFA is not a
You wanna play
simulation
real
of
people?
soccer or football,
Sure.
Oh, we
but
might
a
have to wait,
simulation
right?
of the
But
NFL
it's not
or of
Okay.
Barcelona playing
Yeah.
soccer, right? And because
So we had to do-
because of the situaization, that's not a word, of the players as like embodying these famous people rather than actually just like bland soccer as like an idea, but changes the relationship of the game and makes it maybe less sporty almost in a sense, more video gamey.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Looks like we're good. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, because you had
Doubles?
said previously that
kill
when
my
you're in the
doubles,
game,
then.
you're able to kind of
I
like
don't
do
play
anything
ranked
that you
because
want.
like I'm actually
Where in
pretty
sports,
high
you're
in that.
limited by the
Is this
physicality
ranked?
of
Are we
the
playing
person.
ranked?
I don't know.
But isn't there a
Oh,
physicality
okay.
Yeah, you're
to
working casual.
playing games, like the dexterity that it takes and like the
Sure,
the
sure. I
stamina
didn't want you to
that
play, like,
that
super hard.
requires?
No, we would really.
Yeah, but that's a bit
Yeah, yes,
different thing. I
absolutely.
was a bit unclear on that. So of course there are limitations what you can do as a player, as well. But in the fictional the game world, they like the Rocket League, the
Right.
cars which are kind of defying the laws of physics
Yeah.
to
Like
great
floating
extent.
down like a leaf.
So in that sense, so in the game world you can have
2-0.
Got him.
very spectacular things.
Really nailed
But
it.
still, yeah.
Scared and straight.
Important part, and that's I think which is kind of when you think of esports as sports, so it requires also this physical
I'll take
training.
that.
What do you think some of the most influential titles in esports have been to the development of the genre?
That's a good question.
Yeah, well, I guess StarCraft historically is a kind of
I'm a big StarCraft guy.
important. Counter-Strike through these various phases has been. Also, it's
Rangoon
important in that
balls.
it has shown that the game, which is kind of basically the same, still has maintained for almost 20 years now. There, Overwatch has made certain important things. We don't know yet how successful it finally will be. And then League of Legends and Dota, of course, they have brought the big money and the huge audiences into this.
So, I'm mildly interested because you're kind of charting the beginnings of esports, or at least the most important moments, to these more very traditionally esporty kind of games like StarCraft, right? We can really clearly see a genesis in Korea of StarCraft becoming like a sport in the way that it is broadcast. I'm interested in the way that arcade gaming and fighting games maybe have been sportified, but maybe not in the same broadcast sense.
Yeah.
Pre-modern times.
Yeah, that's true. There's a long tradition for the fighting games and kind of competitive there, and it's still kind of going strong, definitely. So, but and that's another area which is quite that sort of separate from the rest of the esports field. And if you're not kind of specifically a fan of fighting games, you don't necessarily see too much of that. And maybe that's the case that it's simply just not my genre. So I'm not so well aware of that.
Well, it's interesting too because they used to like in order to make like when you because they had like the lists of arcade like who was on top like kind of nationally and internationally like in order to be top
Lift
ranked
that.
it had to be videotaped and you had to prove that you did it yourself.
Yeah, I sure.
And so like it wasn't broadcast in the same way, but it was like obviously not streamed, but it was like there was video that was watched that was
there is a
Game
that sort of kind of prehistory to esports. Actually, one of my PhD students is just finishing his PhD on this aspect especially, and he's been looking at, for example, TV shows where people are kind of playing video games in a competitive way. There's been lots of those ever since early 1980s. And then people have been also making these kind of video recordings of their own play. VHS. Video.
I'm so bad.
So there's a game in Beloit, D&D game in Beloit, where they've been playing for 20 years, and there's this older gentleman, I think he's 75 or 80, and he, in 1975, was broadcasting D&D on public access television that people could call into and like play a character on the phone, and so like that kind of like interactive broadcast of gaming. It's interesting to look at the history of it and how far back it actually goes.
That's exactly
I'll take it.
what this PhD student Tero Kerstula is named. He has started the online database on this kind of TV shows. So kind of
Exactly
trying
as I
to
planned.
gather kind of globally what kind of TV shows there has been, and it's amazing how much and how kind of varied types of these. Not only about video games, but also these kind of role-playing games, tabletop games.
Failures.
Yes. Correct.
You need to
Guaranteed.
represent serious, but I need to change my name to Serious Play, not my actual handle, because you're disgracing it now.
Is that serious?
I know.
It is very
I'm totally
It's not
kidding.
serious.
God, if this group was that serious, I wouldn't be a part of it.
I mean, we are named Serious Play.
That means nothing.
No. If you have any questions, let us know.
What's our viewer count? 5?
Are there any questions that Chad has asked that we haven't gotten to?
Nope.
Okay.
Shout out from any of my students if you want brownie points.
Same for mine.
If any of my students are in chat, no brownie points. But thank you for showing up.
But it's interesting in Rocket League that there are several football teams or soccer teams kind of involved in that. So Paris Saint-Germain was there for a long time. They are not there anymore, but there is FC Barcelona is now.
I think they caught on. They were terrible.
Is the
Yeah, I
kind of
know.
biggest
It's
name.
really embarrassing.
They're like, oh, just
Did they
just
have-
push.
There
Oh,
needs
yeah,
to
that
start
was the
being
question I was
Rocket
going
League
to
again.
ask on the walkover. Is as we see Rocket League kind of developing into an esport, or as it continues to develop as an esport, rather than developing into, where you're seeing more and more sponsorships, and like the way that league play is constructed is changing. And I think you mentioned yesterday that like FC Barcelona has like a Rocket League team.
Sure, yeah.
And so how are we seeing like?
Can I
How are
use
we
this
considering this
camera?
merge between the maybe more traditional institutions of sport and the way that they want to get involved in esports? Like I'm thinking just this week, one of my favorite Super Smash Brothers players, Zane, he got sponsored by basically the Golden State Warriors, of what their esports team is. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's I think the traditional sports teams are still just kind of a little bit cautious. They're looking at what's happening there,
All right.
and it seems that there is not that sort of long span or long-term vistas at the moment. Everything's changing so fast.
But Billy,
And,
just gonna go
like
this way.
the teams in Rocket League. I was just going through the history of the 8 seasons so far, and there are a couple. I don't think there actually
That's
not a
pretty
single
cool.
team left
Cool
of
animation.
the season 1 or season 2, and it was just 5 years ago. It's hard to kind of create that sort of recognizable brand in a field that changes so fast. So I think that's a kind of a challenge for this traditional sports teams. But of course they are. It kind of brings huge amount of attention to Rocket League that Barca is there, for example. So.
Quit being so good.
So how did you start researching about esports? Like, what brought you in your career to kind of research of games and this kind of stuff?
Well, I have come a long way. I have a background in literary studies, quite traditional ones.
Some of us around here do. Yeah.
Then went to cultural studies and kind of recognized that there is something that we call digital culture already into mid 1990s, and through digital culture then I came to game studies. And then lots of younger colleagues were kind of talking about these sports, and I went to a DreamHack Leipzig tournament a couple of years ago. That was my first live event, and I was totally kind of lost at that point. So it was my first contact with Rocket League. My idea was to go watch mainly Counter-Strike, but when I saw the first Rocket League match live, I was totally hooked. I had to watch it all through.
Man, we
missed
won
all the
again.
Counter-Strike, but after
Now
that it's
Yep.
been so for the past 2 years
Yep.
I've spent a lot of time watching
Sure.
Counter-Strike, Rocket
Anybody want
League, Dota, Overwatch, all of these, and I think it is maybe the most kind of single most interesting and even important phenomenon within kind of game cultures. It's changing the whole field
Do you want to stay online?
in a very significant ways.
So did you play games
just- yeah, just say right,
before you got into studying esports, like video games?
Yes. I have been playing games. I had my first microcomputer in early 1980s, so I have been playing those games. Also the arcade games at that time. Space Invaders was the first love of mine. So
Yeah, there is a Froyo shop
yeah.
with Space Invaders in that you can play.
yeah, it has to be the original, the old game. So, but yeah,
They
so
beat us
there
by
was a
7. If you
that
think-
sort of
if you think
several
we
years
can.
that I didn't play much.
Oh, I don't think we can.
At the time when I was a student in literature student, it was not cool to play video games. So we were reading Kafka and that sort of stuff.
You can't play video games and read Kafka. Is that
Well,
what it is?
nowadays I
Oh,
can
it
do
is
it,
the
no
same
problem.
people.
At that time
Okay.
it was
We're gonna
more
crush them. They
challenging.
don't know that it's
They have
you
no
and me
idea.
now.
Melissa Kagan would give you an argument about Kafka.
But as you just saw,
I got
I'm
this.
just kind of lousy player, so it's my. But I like more this sort of story-driven adventure, role-playing adventure games. Witcher 3 is my current favorite.
Okay.
Been playing quite a lot of that.
Yeah, I think we were playing that, this summer in serious play? Witcher?
Yeah, which
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I got I guess I.
That was
Nathan
awesome.
was,
That
making his
was-
way through.
Fun.
They don't know that. They don't know that you went on.
Have you watched the Netflix
Janelle, do you prefer
Yes.
mouse
series?
keyboards?
Did you like it?
Sort of, but I
Well,
haven't played very much.
Because I've never
Okay.
played Witcher myself, and so
Alright.
I'm
Uh,
fascinated
you can
to
take
hear
I
about people.
liked it, yes.
Oh,
but,
My key bindings are different,
It's
but
it's
that
not
actually worked out
perfect.
just fine.
It's far from perfect.
Did you
Oh,
read the
sorry, I
books?
went for it, and
Yeah,
then you went for it, and we both missed it there.
oh yeah, I've read all of the books. Yes.
So is the show more like the books or more like the game, or is it just kind of its own kind of thing?
I think it's visually it's borrowing very clearly from the game. It's taken some of the aspects from the game, but also from the books some of the storylines. But I've been arguing, I just gave a presentation on the adaptation, the game adaptation of the novels that, and briefly discussing the TV series as well. That I think the game is still the main source for the TV series.
I'll try to pass
More
it to you.
than the novels.
Remediation, if you will.
It is. Well,
Yeah.
I would consider more as a kind of transmedia phenomenon. So it's a big transmedia franchise. You
I
have
know
kind of
nothing about
various-
media studies,
yeah.
actually, so I just like throw words out there and see if I'm right.
Fine.
But it's a there are
We don't
various
know
elements,
either.
That's the secret.
various modalities. So you can kind of approach the Witcher universe through the games, through the novels, through the TV
Oh.
series, or there's comic books as
I
well.
thought that was you. for
Why
a
is
sec.
Witcher your favorite?
Well, I like the humor in it. That's and also
Got it.
well, it's inevitable that you have to
No,
compare it to Game of Thrones, and I like Witcher because there's more of the fantasy element.
Thank you for
Really,
being the
than
best.
in Game of Thrones.
Well, I mean, Game of Thrones is very much more about the political,
Yeah.
the political landscape within kind of like a semi-high fantasy
Sure,
space,
Yeah.
Right.
for sure.
Raina was telling me earlier that the
Oops, sorry.
No, it's good, it's
the
good.
game. Sorry, is this the Witcher game you were telling
Yeah.
me about? Really, the one where
We both-
no, sorry, the
both
Game
go
of
back.
Thrones game.
Yeah,
I got it.
They've taken the sex.
I'm the
out.
dribble, and then it's yours.
yeah. That's what
Coming in?
happened. The Telltale game of Thrones. There's no sex at all. No nudity.
So
it's a, like,
he's
very-
watching.
I can't even imagine Game of
Right.
Thrones, the book, or
Yeah.
like the book series, or the show without the nudity. Like that's one of the core components.
Yeah, no,
Go for,
I have been looking at the Let's Play
I
videos,
should have just gone
of
for
it,
it.
and
Yeah,
my
yeah.
expectation
Yeah.
was that the players or the audience would be somehow commenting or
Right.
kind of maybe even complaining about it.
But wait, their clothes are still on.
But they're not really even mentioning it. Well, there are some exceptions. There is one female player who kind of starts that. I hope that there's lots of sex and violence. Otherwise, it's not Game of Thrones. And she's kind of complaining that why it's not a possibility. But most of them not even kind of mentioning it at all.
Well, I mean, Game of Thrones
Nice try.
in the books and definitely in the TV show. I mean, the nudity is excessive.
Yeah.
So,
It's
You
integral
know.
part of it. Yeah.
With look, if it's nudity in the book, it's only because that's in your head. So,
whatever. The show is basically pornography.
yes,
Yes.
certainly.
Well, seasons 1 and 2. After
Yeah,
that, much
that's
less.
true.
Much less.
That's true.
Gonna try and center.
But yeah, well, there is a dose of that in Witcher as well, and especially in the
Oh
games.
shoot, that was
Yeah.
a good center actually.
We're
Yeah.
actually talking
Excessive-
about gratuitous
good
nipple.
one, though.
Gratuitous
That's okay.
nipple was
Yeah.
the
Excuse
was
me?
the phrase that we used,
Yeah.
and that's
Oh,
I
nice.
love that band. A little high.
That's my favorite band.
was that the same? That
That
was we
was-
were playing Disco Elysium and Disco
Yeah.
Dispositions was also.
Yeah.
You need
Oh
to
yeah,
write that
disco
blog post,
dispositions.
Kelly.
Do I have to?
Yes, you do because I cannot
I'm
steal
pretty
your
sure-
idea unless
I'm
you
pretty
want
sure
me to
Janelle
steal.
wrote that post.
I 100% did not write that post. I
am-
just clipped the
I am
video.
happy to steal that idea
Oh,
and just
go
like
for
give
it.
you a footnote,
Go for it.
but I feel like that would be
Tell me
me.
what you're talking about.
Okay, so you know, as
Nice,
Thomas
I'm
is
gonna
all
go for
about
it again.
disposition.
Oh, yes. Alright, it's all you.
That's his big thing all the
Oh,
time.
new guy, you're scared.
And we were playing Disco Elysium, where there's no disco. You don't do disco ever. It's just like mentioned randomly in places, and so to the point that like it becomes like I don't even know more of a like way of life than a dance. Like I don't know in this game. And so Kelly threw out the term disco disposition, and I think it would make a lovely just.
Nice.
Just
I'd rather write the gratuitous nipple paper than the
Why can't we have
you just need to write
both?
up like 6 blurbs
Let's
of all
try
the
to
cool
pass.
stuff
Alright.
that we
Oh, no, that's okay.
that we had in that one show, and just like do mini definitions of
Okay.
True.
Well, I'm just doing this now.
what we meant by gratuitous nipple and disco dispositions, and we had another one too. They're listed on the Twitter.
They
Because I
are.
posted
I don't.
that.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
We got a viewer out of that too.
Yeah.
Gratuitous
Well.
nipple.
I mean,
Pass.
because we were talking about how, because like I did love the Witcher 3 games, but like there
I
was
can
just,
get one of the passing. Oh
just
no.
you know, just
Alright, it's
sex
up to
and
you now.
nipples thrown around
Oh,
in
no.
ways that I didn't feel like
That's how we
necessarily contributed to
instantly
gameplay
lost.
nor the story.
2-1 is
So
better
when
than
I first I saw the first
7-1.
episode of The Witcher and I went, oh, this is cool. This is like vaguely like
You wanna play
feminist
Incline?
sounding. I bet that there's not going to
I
be
will,
nearly
yeah,
as
if you
much
don't want
to. Go for
like
it.
unnecessary
Ryan and
nudity.
Kennedy
want keyboard?
Then
I definitely
I
want
watched
to
the rest of
control
the
this time.
series, and it wasn't bad. I just said it just had a gratuitous amount of nipple, which is where that came from.
It's worth noting, Raina, this is often what happens on stream, which
Yes.
is really good. It's like, right, we just start talking about nipples.
Yep.
We know we're
You always
land
end with nipples when you play games.
But
I'm
like,
curious. Oh, go ahead.
but yeah, I just like, and this is one of the things that I find really exciting about being academic streaming, and I think everyone in this room will agree, is like, not only like the random conversations, or enjoy a nice community, but also there's just such an opportunity to ferment ideas. It's kind to me, I treat it as like when I come in for 2 hours to do the arena or show on esports, it's like another seminar that's on
Sure.
esports
Yeah.
for the week.
I mean, I really enjoy it because there's so in seminars there's some playfulness to them,
Okay.
but it's much more like very much focused, and there the professor is kind of like the mediator of that space, making sure we kind of stay on topic. And when we're playing, we're kind of like you're able
Thank you,
to
too.
like just bounce from idea to idea, and then later go back and see, oh, this first idea is actually connected to that last idea, and I never would have known that if we hadn't had kind of like some of the freedom to bounce around.
Yeah, I just took
Alright, I'll go for
Katamari
it.
Damacy off my syllabus in favor of something else that I think was wonderful, but I am now regretting that because it occurs to
jump.
me that that's a game we can play
Jump
while
is
we talk. You know,
Put it back on.
Yeah, maybe I'll
Later in the
I'll
semester.
push something else out. Yeah, and put it.
Or you could do the Thomas thing and just throw it on top of it.
No, I'm trying not to do that.
That's Thomas's favorite mode.
Yeah.
Oh, we had 600 pages of reading, and we talked about that one book that would be awesome to read. Let's just add another 500. It's fine.
I thought it was better to controllers. Turns out I
Right,
am.
I'm curious about how like different
I'm
aspects of
obviously not very good
esports
either.
scholarship that you felt really enriched game studies as a whole. If there's anything that comes to mind for that.
Interesting question. I have thought it from that angle. Well, certainly it has brought the kind of spectatorship of others playing into the new level. So it's been there always.
I didn't do
Playing
that.
games has been
I'll take
quite
those
so.
bounces.
So
Sure.
I have always been the one who has enjoyed watching others play more than playing myself. And now it's a kind of there's a whole new world for kind of enjoying games that way. So that kind of audience research certainly has kind of
Get it.
enriched the field of game studies. Yes.
Yes.
So we had T.L. Taylor over last semester, and so obviously a good chunk of us have read her book. But are there any works? Because like almost everything I've ever read on esports has been American. Is there like, are there any pieces that are kind of like have been integral to like your research?
Well, have to admit I have been reading TL's books myself. One of my colleagues has just he wrote a kind of monograph on esports. It's not published yet, unfortunately. Hopefully, coming out later this year. That will be a major contribution by Veli-Matti Karhulahti. But otherwise, it's mainly certain articles on that and. Not that much really. So TL has really been the trailblazer.
Okay.
In this field.
I found that
Also Nick Taylor, the other Taylor who was.
yeah.
Do you consider metagaming to be a text on esports as well?
Sorry?
Metagaming by Stephanie Baluk and
Patrick Lemieux.
Patrick Lemieux.
Yeah. Well, I'm familiar with that one. Yeah. So it's certainly kind of influential work as well.
That was it.
Bye.
It's a good book.
One thing I found interesting while playing is like I've almost always played Rocket League by myself or like with friends over like Discord or something, right? And playing with like Janelle and you, I found myself constantly peeking over to see what you were doing, right? Like oh they're there, like, and it was just like distracting almost, like, and so like I wonder like when we're playing like these kinds of games where we share a screen with whether it's our teammate or a competitor, how does that impact the play experience?
I mean, I think back to like just Mario Kart and like what is the purpose of us checking in?
Oh,
So
damn.
like
I was trying to watch him on your
checking in
screen.
to see
getting it
how
before
far
you did.
behind, whether or not to use like because I remember like there's a stop peeking at my screen because you don't want to see where the other person is. But this is clearly very different.
I get lost on other people's screens.
Yeah.
When it's split screen, I will just like be like, yeah, I'm totally playing my
Nice.
own thing and like be totally not even looking at my screen.
Got him.
Lead.
Got him.
Yeah, but still about the other research, there's also a Finnish researcher Juho Hamari
Yeah.
and his research team. They have been doing quite a lot of
That
work on esports.
that is
Can
who
you
Chris
spell-
Lee is going to work with in Finland
Okay.
if she gets that grant. It's Juho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry.
Can
you
I remember
spell-
his
Where
name.
is-
I'm
where
getting
is he?
requests from chat to spell out
Tampere.
referenced authors. So
That's right, it was Tampere.
Finnish reference authors. Can you spell their name? Because I can't.
JUHO. And then it's HAMARI.
And who was the first person that you said? The person that you recognized?
Veli-Matti Karulahti.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
And then, well,
Nice.
maybe it's easier if I type it because it's
Yeah.
like what's
Go for it.
Oh,
God,
she there's
hitting B for fucking jump. Didn't go in.
Sure didn't.
I'll take it.
Yeah, that one did.
That one did. That one did. Indeed. There's still 2 minutes left, almost.
Yeah, we're only down
Plenty
to
of
one.
time. Plenty of time.
all the time in the world.
Sorry,
How much time do we
I
have?
interrupted,
That's a good
but
question.
going back to the
15.
split screen experience question that Eric asked.
Well, yeah, I think it's the same with me that I get so kind of immersed in my own half of the screen that I kind of no time to see what others are doing.
I know on Couchsurfing, the cooperative show that we stream sometimes, we talk about being able to see each other's space, particularly in relation to our own space, as being sort of conducive to communication and spatial awareness. So, I mean, I'm watching Janelle's screen, particularly when I don't have the ball centered in mine, to see where the enemy team is. I don't know. Maybe it's. Oh my god, I'm so bad.
Yeah, there's like a. I think it's it's like a co-situation or something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
Can you stop that?
But talking about Rocket League, do you have favorite teams or players?
There's
Real sick of their
I
shit.
like tend to watch Rocket League
They gotta
almost
go.
more in the like not the like the accidental sense, right? Like it's on, I'll put it on and watch it. There's a player named like Stewie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has some flashy plays. Like that's the one player I can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah,
to be
favorite
fair,
big
we're not
French player is
team.
my all-time favorite. And then Chronovi.
Oh, Kronovi, yeah,
he's a kind of American player. And then Devo, I think from.
You have a favorite team?
Yeah, have to say Team Solomate. They have 2 Finnish players in there. So
All right.
the other one is called, or his kind of screen name is Metsänauris, which is a very archaic Finnish word. It sounds very funny even for a Finn.
Raina, do you think that there is work to be done on considering the way nationality kind of plays into the popularity of esports in a particular way? Not just in terms of like
I'm not
this
good. I don't
population
wanna
is
play.
more predisposed to. Here, I'll join it. For the last
Any
move.
masochist.
This population is more predisposed to liking esports, but like thinking in terms of like in Japan, there's much more of a focus on like fighting games, and in Korea you've got like StarCraft. And Rocket League, I've always kind of imagined it as more, even though I think Psyonix is an American company, as being like a more European style kind of game. Not just because of football, and Americans with soccer here or whatever, but like, do you see cultural differences kind of affecting how esports become popular in different places?
Well, certainly there are kind of types of games which are popular in various places. That's quite obvious. What I'm kind of interested in myself is the whole that sort of the importance of nationality for the fandom, which is seems to be it's getting more important. So in that sense, also getting closer to traditional sports. So that there are some of the teams are getting that sort of semi national team position. And also when you follow the chat in Twitch during the games, the audience is constantly making references to the nationality. So it seems to be there should not be kind of need for kind of emphasizing that, but but for some reason it's there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to kind of discuss this a little bit during my lecture.
Oh, great.
Today.
Cool.
I'm excited.
Which, if you're on campus, starts at 3:30 on curtain 118.
Years.
Got it.
I think so. I have never been able to sit and just watch esports. I can sit and watch my friends play, and be on the sidelines there. And I wonder, like, if
I'll take it.
if I like knew enough to know where the German players were, which is like my dad is from Germany, and so I don't watch very many sports, but I will watch soccer when the Germans are playing. Because that has been kind of like a tradition for me and my dad, and so I kind of have like some of that, like, I don't know. It's important to me because I share a history with like the German heritage there, and I like watching my friends play because I have a stake in it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if I like knew who the German players were in an esports like team, if I would be more invested or not.
I would not be playing anywhere nearly as good as you are, but that was just funny.
That was just
yeah. Most of the teams
just the game.
indicate clearly their nationality, but then there are also teams
game
which are
moment.
kind of multinational.
Right.
They don't have a flag. They may have a kind of European flag, for example, or something. But so it's kind of, in some cases it's very important that is kind of that NC in Counter Strike. It's a Finnish team. Astral is a Danish team.
I just love
all
that handle.
But then there are other teams where it's not so clear. Not so
uniform.
It seems like a missed opportunity to not call this game Sock Cars.
that was I think that was like the original name.
Oh, was it?
Or was it Rocket Cars? Maybe.
It was something
Something like. Oh no, it had like a really long name, Super something. It had a like 5-word name.
But it was like supposed to abbreviate to Sockars, I think.
I think you're right.
Okay.
Shoot, I had a question. Oh yeah, okay. So this is just kind of a general question. I don't know how familiar. Shoot, darn it, that was an easy one. I don't know how familiar you are. But this is something that I've just been considering recently. Is the way that esports are very much spectacle focused, and like I'm using like the term in like Thomas Gunning in his work. Where do you see spectacle kind of relating to esports and competitive gaming?
Well, it's very central in two ways. So, like the games themselves, like Rocket League. So it's a spectacle in itself. Just you can choose this very that sort of visually lavish kind of feels. Doesn't have any significance for the play itself, but it makes it a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, and especially these LAN tournaments, the big tournaments, which are huge spectacles with all pyrotechnics and all of that. So that's a big part of the appeal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, all that said, to me, esports, the home is online in streams. So these LAN events are still some sort of auxiliary things, and it's hard to believe that they would kind of get to central stage.
So, would you say that you think the in-person LAN
I got it.
esports are sort of remediating the online experience?
I think you can put it that way. Yeah.
Backwards than maybe you would you might think it would be.
So it's not kind of native form.
Yeah.
Oh.
And of course, no matter there are
Nice
not
save.
stadiums big enough that they could ever host as many spectators than an online stream at its best.
So what happens when you're hitting the glowy things on the ground?
Those
On
are
the ground,
boosts.
Gives
it's
you
boost,
boost,
so
you
it
can.
makes my DeLorean
It
go
makes
super
the
fast.
numbers on the bottom go up.
It's
Gotcha.
basically the form of gasoline in this world.
Okay.
Oh shoot, liquid karma.
Yeah.
Fluid karma. Yeah.
Close
Oh.
enough.
Wow.
And
Their
one of the
incompetence
one of
is
the kind
unpredictable.
of brilliant little details in Rocket League, I think, is that when the time is up, if the ball is flying, then it's continuous until until it hits the ground. So those few seconds can be really intense.
Does it happen often that it will like go into the goal and kind of those last few
So
seconds?
not that often, but it happens.
It's to borrow some Malabian terms. It's the contingency that makes it exciting.
We cannot get into a space where Malabian is a real word. No.
I'm gonna make it a real word.
No. That is too much for me. Please don't.
Alright, we just gotta keep it on there. So it's like this is where like what Raina's talking about though. Like this is where like they are gonna want to keep it in the air starting now, and if it touches the ground they lose. So like that's where like the intensity can come in of like feeling like you're on the cusp of we won. Is it? It's 2:30 now, right?
Yeah, you got 4 minutes.
All right, so we got some time to just we'll just chat for a little bit, and then we'll end up chat. Last chance for any questions that you have, even if it's it can be anything. Like, what's your favorite color, Raina?
Yeah, chat. Any questions?
Ooh, good color. Also my favorite color.
I like the aspect that, when a timer's out, it still goes until the ball touches the ground, because it's very common in analog sports that even though the timer's out, it's until a certain other contingency happens. You go out of bounds, the ball.
Like the liveness of the ball
in
or of the
American
play.
football, the way those final sort of 20 seconds of a game get.
I think of basketball too a lot. Like that
hockey.
last like hockey. Yeah,
Hockey's not over until it's
It used to be
officially
the
over.
case, it's no longer true. It used to be the case in Australian rules football that there was no clock. I mean, there's no visual display of the time. There's a guy keeping time, but it's not announced to the teams or to the audience, right? So you're wondering, like, when's the whistle going to go? I mean, we think it's, and it's it's a totally
That's
different
like
experience.
Traditional soccer can kind of no, you got to do it.
Get out of here. Karate one.
Yeah, that's kind of like in traditional soccer where the time is kept by the referee, and like it's very wishy-washy as to when the half will end.
Yep.
They can be like, they'll give you a +4, but the +4 could mean +7 or +2. Like
it's up to the referees.
Yeah,
that's true.
there's more. Typically, there's a finality to almost every sport I can imagine of like the health bar being drained to 0, or the ancient in Dota being destroyed, or in Rocket League the ball hitting the ground. I guess that's part of being able. The architecture of the game allows for that kind of thing, but better.
Also, Rocket League is very much that's a momentum game, so that one team may win the first game, something like 4-0. And then the next game, it's already kind of totally opposite. So suddenly, for some reason, just the momentum changes, and so you never know. There are always these kind of comebacks, all that. So also, I like the fast pacing of the game. So after a goal, it's 3 seconds, and off you go again. So no, that's a late time.
And you're always playing the game, right? It's not like on League or Counter-Strike where if you die, you have to sit and wait a long time, where you're just not even playing.
Yeah, because even in a demolition, you're out for 3 seconds, maybe 4.
Well, we did get ourselves to 2:30.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this special episode of Serious Play. If you are on campus, you can come see Raina talk.
If you're not on campus right now, get on the bus. You have an hour.
Raina, is there anywhere like on like Twitter or anywhere that people who might be watching a VOD of this could follow you or read some of your work?
Yeah, well, coe-gamecult.org. That's the website. Gamecult.org.
All right. So
Or,
that's
or,
where
you know, game cult, like what we are.
FI.
Yeah.
You have to check.
But
which
yeah.
one.
So that'll be one way if you're watching this in the distant future, where you can also catch some of Raina's work. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.
All right.
Really.
Catch you next
Have
time.
a wonderful day.
Have a great one.
Bye-bye.